praised his proposal. We start with our top story today, and Pope Francis has passed away at the age of 88, as confirmed by the Vatican. The Bishop of Rome and head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, became pontiff in 2013 following the resignation of his predecessor, Benedict. Cardinal Farrell announced the sad news in a statement saying, "Dearest brothers and sisters, with deep sorrow I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis." Let's listen in to what Cardinal Kevin Farrell has said.
Carissimi fratelli e sorelle, con profondo dolore devo annunciare la morte del nostro Santo Padre Francesco. Alle ore 7:35 di questa mattina, il Vescovo di Roma Francesco è tornato alla casa del Padre. La sua vita tutta intera è stata dedicata al servizio del Signore e della sua Chiesa. Ci ha insegnato a vivere i valori del Vangelo con fedeltà, coraggio e amore universale, in modo particolare a favore dei più poveri ed emarginati. Con immensa gratitudine per il suo esempio di vero discepolo del Signore Gesù, raccomandiamo l'anima del Papa Francesco all'infinito amore misericordioso di Dio uno e trino.
Well, the Vatican flag is lowered on the Latin Patriarchate headquarters in the old city of Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Pope Francis's body will be placed in a coffin at the St. Martha Residence Chapel at 8 p.m. local time. Cardinal Kevin Farrell will lead the rites confirming his death, the Vatican has announced. Tributes are pouring in from world leaders following the death of Pope Francis. Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, praised Pope Francis for his desire to lead and build the Church in new ways and his service of the poor, noting his deep awareness of divisions between churches and their impact on faith. Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, called him a great man. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron praised his commitment to justice, and the vulnerable Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof described him as a man of the people, while EU Parliament President Roberta Metsola said his smile captured hearts worldwide. Israeli President Isaac Herzog honoured his boundless compassion, while Swiss President Karin Keller-Sutter called him a tireless advocate for peace. And Scotland's First Minister John Swinney remembered him as a voice for peace, tolerance and reconciliation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky mourned Pope Francis's death, saying he prayed for peace in Ukraine and for Ukrainians. He added, "We grieve with Catholics and all Christians." Let's listen in to what some leaders have said.
N'est plus, et je voulais ici dire toute la tristesse qui est la nôtre dans ce moment et la grande douleur, je le sais, qui est partagée par beaucoup en France, mais à travers la planète. Je veux adresser avant toute chose mes condoléances les plus sincères à l'ensemble des catholiques du monde entier, leur dire notre soutien, dire aussi la place toute particulière qui était la sienne dans notre cœur et à nos côtés. Il était avec nous en Corse il y a encore quelques semaines. Il avait été à nos côtés à Marseille il y a plusieurs mois et il a marqué durant son pontificat la France de plusieurs passages ainsi, avec cette carte sensible. Il a durant tout son pontificat été aux côtés des plus vulnérables, des plus fragiles, avec beaucoup d'humilité et un sens tout particulier dans ces temps de guerre et de brutalité, un sens tout particulier de l'autre, oui, et du plus fragile. Et en cela, il a été fidèle à une tradition qui lui était chère.
عرض می‌کنم به همه مسیحیان جهان و همه موحدین و پیروان ادیان آسمانی درگذشت پاپ فرانسیس رو از خداوند بزرگ برای ایشون طلب آرامش میکنیم.
Well, Spain will observe 3 days of mourning to honour Pope Francis following his death. Justice Minister Felix Bolaños announced he praised Francis's reformist papacy, highlighting his dedication to the weak, his fight against inequality and his advocacy for peace and climate action. Bolaños emphasised Spain's deep connection to his values and legacy, especially in defence of peace. Well, joining us to discuss this top story today is Rabbi David Rosen, a former Chief Rabbi of Ireland, who's joining us from Jerusalem. Rabbi David, thank you ever so much for joining us. Of course, your role within Judaism, a key one. We know that Pope Francis, of course, is somebody who has been celebrated for his work within the Catholic Church, but also outside of it, looking at peace, as mentioned there by world leaders, and his work for the poor. From your point of view, what made Pope Francis the man that is being celebrated today?
Thank you. One could actually say that no pope ever in history, perhaps since Peter, knew the Jewish community as well as Pope Francis did, and who had built up bonds and bridges of friendship and of mutual respect. When he was Cardinal of Buenos Aires, he had many friends across the different denominations within Judaism. He wrote a book with a rabbi. He visited the synagogue on Jewish festivals. He opened the cathedral's doors to commemorate the victims of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. And in fact, so many friends used to visit him in Rome that the chief rabbi of Rome used to say to me that it's actually in St. Peter's we need to open a new synagogue because there were so many visitors there at the time. So he had a very close relationship with the Jewish community, and continuing that of his predecessors, was a champion of combating anti-Semitism, which he said was incompatible with being a true Christian and a sin against man and God. So he was a very special pope for the Jewish community. You know, he was the third to visit the synagogue in Rome, and I was privileged to be present, and it was like a family reunion. In fact, that was the language he spoke. He uses the term in terms of family coming together, and that was a hallmark of his papacy. It was all very, very personal, very connected. It was not something abstract or theoretical.
Yes, Rabbi David, of course, he focused on people and humanity with so many conflicts and areas of humanitarian crises ongoing. How did he push that forward?
Well, I would say probably as best he could, which was only in terms of articulating a moral voice. Some would actually criticize him that on certain conflicts he wasn't a little more forthright. For example, I don't recall that there was any condemnation of Russia's actual invasion of Ukraine. I think that very often the Vatican and Pope Francis, in this case, is reflecting that, feels the need to be able to maintain as much openness as possible for the possibility of acting as some form of interlocutor. But nevertheless, certainly as a voice of peace, condemning violence, that was very much part and parcel of his ministry, of his message.
Yes, and looking at the messages that have been coming in from every corner of the globe, we're showing some on screen now from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, also in Europe, North America, South America as well. The outcry and the messages have all been similar, celebrating him and his work. Why did he touch so many corners of the world?
We've referred to that. It was very much his humanity. He had very much the common touch that gave his papacy a kind of an accessibility, a familiarity for people. They could identify with him much more than with popes in the past. So there was also perhaps the possibilities of modern social media made him also even more accessible. So that accessibility, I think, really typified the man and his papacy.
Absolutely, and celebrating Pope Francis and his papacy, of course, people mourning now across the world, those who are Catholics, Christians and non-Catholics as well. Do you think that support will continue and those outcries will continue? And how will people remember him?
I think overwhelmingly they will remember him as the Pope of the people. And I think that will be his legacy. Human memories are very short, and while there is a strong identification with him at this time, a new Pope will come in who will assume a new style, and we tend to forget how remarkable John Paul II was for his time. He really sort of was a kind of a revolution for the church, but for young people today, they don't even remember that. So time marches on and change comes with it, and we will remember a very special Pope, but there will be new memories ahead for us.
Rabbi David Rosen, thank you ever so much for joining us and sharing your comments and memories of Pope Francis, of course, as those tributes continue.